My wife cheated with her boss, while I renovated our home alone. So I sold the house, kept the profit, and left her begging in court. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and renovating our dream home was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. Emily and I had spent months scouring listings, making Pinterest boards, and sketching out floor plans. I still remember the first day we walked through the old, peeling house and imagined it transformed. The hardwood floors gleaming, the kitchen outfitted just the way she wanted, the garden blooming with flowers she'd picked. To me, it wasn't just a house. It was the foundation of everything we were building together. Emily would smile and squeeze my hand, and I'd feel this rush of pride, like we were a team conquering the world one paintbrush stroke at a time. From the very start, I threw myself into it completely. Weekdays blurred into weekends as I spent 12-hour stretches sanding, painting, patching drywall, and tiling floors. Nights were the worst. I'd crawl into bed exhausted, muscles sore, mind buzzing with measurements, color palettes, and contractor calls. Every dollar mattered. Every piece of furniture, every light fixture. I calculated, recalculated, and stretched our budget until it squeaked. I told myself it was worth it. I was creating a home we'd loved for decades. Emily tried to help when she could, but her work schedule kept her busy. "Another client dinner tonight," she'd sigh over a hurried cup of coffee, brushing past my latest coat of primer. She smiled, reassured me she'd swing by later, but I started noticing her absence more than her presence. The empty house echoed around me as I painted walls she had picked out, imagining our life inside them. And yet, I convinced myself she was supportive, even if it felt distant, because that's what love looked like, right? Sacrifice, sweat, and hope that our efforts would pay off. Sometimes, while I worked alone, she'd mention long hours at work events or staying late at the office, almost apologetically, and I'd nod, smile, reassure her. I thought I understood her, that she understood me. I believed all these sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the aching hands, the mounting stress, were for our future together. But looking back, I had no idea the cracks forming weren't in the walls I was painting. They were in the life we were supposed to be building. I knew something was off before I even realized it. It started with small things. Emily's phone would buzz constantly, and she'd quickly flip it over when I walked into the room. At first, I told myself it was just work, just endless emails and client messages. "You're imagining things," I muttered to myself more than once, trying to shake the unease creeping through my chest. But there was this nagging feeling every time she laughed quietly at a text, or when she stepped out of the room to take a call, and returned with a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. I tried to focus on the renovations, pouring myself into sanding the floors and repainting the cabinets. It was supposed to be therapy, something to keep my mind busy. "Babe, can you grab that paintbrush?" I'd call out, but often she was too busy with work calls or meetings to even glance up. I could feel the emotional distance growing, this invisible wall forming between us while I wielded hammers and rollers alone. Friends would stop by and comment on how tired I looked. "Emily's working you too hard," they'd say. I'd laugh it off, telling them it was worth it for our dream home. But deep down, there was a pit in my stomach that refused to be ignored. One evening, I noticed a faint perfume lingering in the air, a scent I didn't recognize. Emily smiled when I mentioned it, dismissing it as a new fragrance she had bought. "Relax, you're overthinking," she said, brushing my concern aside. And I did. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to cling to the idea that she was just stressed, that all this long work hours and secretive behavior was part of the grind, not something personal. But little moments started piling up. Whispered phone conversations, hurried texts she tried to hide, evenings that stretched into late nights at work events. I told myself I was imagining it, that love required patience and trust. And yet, every time I turned a corner in the house, I felt a shadow of doubt creeping into my mind. Something wasn't right. I just didn't know how deep the cracks ran, or how soon I'd see them widen. I'll never forget the day I found the messages. It was late evening, and I was double-checking some invoices on Emily's laptop. She had left it unlocked, as she often did in her rush to leave for a work dinner. I thought I'd just skim through the receipts, make sure everything matched. But then I noticed a chat window minimized in the corner. Curiosity tugged at me, and before I could stop myself, I clicked. My heart sank the second I saw her name lighting up with someone else, her boss. At first, I couldn't believe it. The messages weren't subtle. They were intimate, flirty, and carried a casualness that made my stomach twist. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one read. "I've been thinking about you all day." Another. I felt frozen, a mix of disbelief and fury rooting me to the spot. My hand shook as I scrolled, finding dozens of texts, calls, and even photos she had sent him. All the long nights I spent sanding floors, all the money I stretched to buy paint and tiles, all the sacrifices. It felt like a cruel joke. I confronted her immediately when she came home. "Emily, what is this?" I asked, holding the laptop between us like evidence in a trial. Her expression shifted, but not with guilt, more like irritation that I'd invaded her space. "It's not what you think," she said, almost rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting, as usual." The disbelief cut, deeper than the betrayal itself. "Overreacting?" I repeated, voice shaking. "These messages. You're with him." She scoffed, brushing past me toward the kitchen. I felt anger, shame, and heartache all at once. I remembered the nights I stayed up painting walls she picked, the long hours I spent tiling our bathroom, imagining her smiling at the life we were building together. And now, those walls felt like a cage, enclosing me in the reality that everything I believed in was a lie. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain she caused me. But I couldn't. I just stood there, numb, while she moved through the house as if nothing had happened. And in that moment, I realized that the life I thought I was building with her was already gone. But I didn't yet know how far I'd have to go to reclaim what was mine. After that day, I couldn't stop replaying the messages in my head. I kept asking myself, how did I miss this? Was I blind? I felt like a fool, pouring every ounce of energy into a home she didn't even care about, while she was sneaking around behind my back. Nights became the worst. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, the smell of paint and sawdust still clinging to my clothes, wondering how the person I trusted most could betray me so completely. The house, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now seemed suffocating, each freshly painted wall a reminder of my own naivety. I tried talking to her, hoping for some explanation, some confession that would make this nightmare less real. "Emily, why?" I asked one night, my voice barely above a whisper as I watched her scroll on her phone. She looked up, smirked almost, and said, "I don't know what you're talking about. You're being paranoid again." That word, paranoid, cut like a knife. It was gaslighting, pure and simple, and I felt myself shrinking under it, doubting not just her, but my own mind. I started withdrawing, telling myself I needed space to think, to process the chaos she'd created. But the house demanded my attention. Floors still needed sanding, cabinets needed finishing, and tiles had to be grouted. I poured myself into the work again, but it was hollow. Every swing of the hammer felt heavier, every brushstroke slower. It wasn't pride driving me anymore. It was frustration, heartbreak, and a simmering anger I couldn't yet name. Friends started noticing the change. "You look exhausted," one said over coffee. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile, laughed it off, and said I was fine. But I wasn't. I was barely holding on, watching the life I thought I had crumble while pretending everything was normal. And in the back of my mind, I knew the betrayal wasn't going to stop here. Whatever I did next, I needed a plan. But I had no idea how dark things were about to get. By the time a few weeks had passed, Emily's indifference became impossible to ignore. She spent entire evenings at work dinners or client meetings, and I began noticing a pattern. She was never really alone when she said she would be. Her excuses became rehearsed, almost theatrical, and I started keeping track, dates, times, inconsistencies, like I was preparing for a battle I didn't yet know how to fight. The house I'd been working on day and night felt emptier than ever, echoing with the absence of the woman I thought I could trust completely. One evening, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, leaning against the doorway of the half-finished kitchen. She looked up from her phone, rolling her eyes. "Not now. I'm tired," she muttered, swiping through her messages. I felt my chest tighten, every inch of me screaming that I deserved honesty, but she dismissed me as usual. "Tired?" I snapped. "Do you know what I've been doing for the past month? Renovating this entire house alone while you disappear for hours every night?" Her response was calm, almost smug. "I'm just working. You're overreacting, as always." It hit me then, the scale of her betrayal. This wasn't a one-time mistake or a fleeting moment of weakness. She had built a life outside our marriage, entirely ignoring everything I sacrificed to make this home perfect for us. I felt a mixture of rage and numbness that left me shaking. Every brushstroke, every nail, every sleepless night, everything I had poured into our dream had been taken for granted. I started thinking strategically, though I didn't admit it to myself yet. If she could treat me like this, maybe it was time I stopped being the victim. But I had to be careful. I began documenting everything: texts, receipts, messages, odd behaviors, anything that could prove the truth if I needed it. And just as I started to feel the first flicker of control, she dropped a line that froze me in place. "You really think you can keep me from my life?" She smiled, calm and dismissive, walking away. I watched her go and realized, with a sinking heart, that this wasn't just infidelity. It was a game, and she believed she was winning. It was around the 6th week that the full scope of Emily's manipulation hit me like a freight train. I was going through some paperwork for the house, checking mortgages, refinancing options, and our joint accounts, when I noticed she'd been quietly pushing me to sign papers, asking me to co-sign documents I hadn't fully read. "It's just paperwork, babe," she said, with that sweet, practiced smile. "I'm making things easier for us." My gut twisted. This wasn't just infidelity anymore. She was trying to secure a piece of everything I'd worked so hard to build. The realization settled like ice in my veins. She assumed she could profit from the very house I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into, while she sneaked around behind my back. My anger, which had been simmering quietly, ignited into something sharper, colder. For the first time, I stopped feeling like a helpless victim and started thinking like someone who could reclaim control. I started plotting, meticulously researching real estate laws, potential sale options, and ways to protect my assets without tipping her off. Every late night I spent alone sanding floors or painting walls became a cover for planning my next moves. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival, both emotional and financial. I kept my cool around her, pretending nothing had changed, but inside, I was calculating every detail. I documented every message, every financial nudge, every suspicious call. I even started imagining the moment I would reveal the truth, when all the tables would turn. And yet, even as I planned, there was a sense of foreboding. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Emily was clever, persuasive, and utterly convinced she had me cornered. The thrill of holding power over my own life for the first time in weeks was tempered by the knowledge that one wrong move could backfire spectacularly. By the time I went to bed that night, the house was quiet, except for the hum of the heater, the faint smell of fresh paint lingering in the air. I lay there, heart pounding, mind racing, realizing that the game had changed. I wasn't just cleaning, painting, or repairing this house anymore. I was preparing for a reckoning, and she had no idea what was coming. By this point, I had fully retreated into the house, living in a strange mix of anger, determination, and exhaustion. Emily continued her late nights at work events, leaving me alone with the renovations, the empty walls, and the deafening silence that seemed to mock me. I spent hours sanding floors until my hands bled, tiling bathrooms while my shoulders ached, and painting walls that no longer felt like ours. They were just reminders of the betrayal I couldn't escape. Yet, there was a strange satisfaction in the work. Every brushstroke, every screw I tightened, felt like reclaiming a little piece of control over a life that had been slipping through my fingers. I started noticing subtle shifts in her behavior too. She would linger in the doorway, asking casually, "How's the house coming along?" with an edge of curiosity that hadn't been there before. I smiled politely, never letting on that I knew she was terrified of what I might do next. I documented everything obsessively: texts, receipts, phone calls, building a paper trail for the day she would face the consequences of her actions. It became a secret ritual, a way to maintain sanity while feeling the balance of power slowly tip in my favor. Friends called and stopped by occasionally. "You need a break," one said, noticing the dark circles under my eyes. "You're doing too much." I laughed and shrugged, hiding the storm inside me. I couldn't explain that every hour I spent sanding a floor or grouting a tile was preparation, not punishment. It was a small part of the plan I was finally putting into motion. And then, late one night, as I stepped back to admire a wall I had just finished painting, a thought struck me. I could do this. I could finish the house, sell it on my terms, and reclaim everything she thought she had manipulated away from me. But the tension in the air was palpable. I knew she was beginning to sense the change in me, the quiet confidence replacing the despair she'd relied on. She had no idea how close she was to losing everything. And yet, I paused, heart hammering, knowing that once I made this move, there would be no turning back. The decision to put the house on the market came quietly, almost like a whisper in the back of my mind. But the moment I hit list, it felt explosive. I had spent weeks finishing every detail, staging rooms, touching up paint, ensuring the lighting made the spaces feel warm and inviting. The house looked perfect, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of pride that wasn't tinged with heartbreak. Emily, of course, had no idea. She still floated through the rooms as if nothing had changed, unaware that I was about to reclaim everything she thought she could control. I kept my demeanor calm when she asked about the new activity. "Just finalizing some paperwork with the agent," I said, smiling, pretending it was routine. She tilted her head, suspicious, but didn't press. I could see her curiosity peaked, the edge of anxiety creeping in around the corners of her smile. It was intoxicating, knowing I had the upper hand now. Every late night she had spent away, every lie she had told, had led to this moment where I had total control over what came next. The showings began, and I guided potential buyers through the house, describing the careful renovations, the custom finishes, and the thoughtful touches Emily had once claimed were our dream. All the while, she watched from the sidelines, trying to act casual, failing miserably. I could feel her panic simmering beneath the surface, but I didn't let it show. I had learned to hold my anger in check, using it strategically rather than letting it explode. And then, as I finalized an offer that would net me the full profit, I caught her looking at me from across the living room. Her expression was a mix of fear and disbelief, the first real crack in her facade. I smiled politely, saying, "Everything's moving along nicely." She didn't reply, just stared. And in that silence, I realized she finally understood that the life she thought she could manipulate was no longer hers to touch. But even as the sale moved forward, the tension was thick, unspoken, and electric. I knew the real storm was coming, and she had no idea how far I was willing to go. The day Emily discovered the listing felt like a punch to the gut. I was in the kitchen, adjusting the last cabinet handles, when she slammed the front door open, eyes wide and voice shaking. "What the hell is this?" she screamed, pointing at the "for sale" sign already planted in the yard. My heart raced, not out of fear, but anticipation. I kept my voice calm, almost serene. "The house is on the market," I said quietly. "Everything's in order. The agent already has a buyer." Her face went pale, and I saw the first flicker of desperation. "You can't do this. This is ours. I helped to pick everything out." Her words tumbled out in a frantic, disjointed rush, the kind of panic that comes from realizing control has slipped through your fingers. I swallowed, steadying myself. "Emily, this house was built with my work, my money, and my time. You've been absent, both in presence and in effort. Now it's time to face the consequences." Her voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "You can't take this from me. We're married. It's mine too." I shook my head slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle between us. "You betrayed me," I said. "You chose him over this life we were supposed to have. I've tried to be fair, but there's nothing left to negotiate." She started pacing, frantic, muttering about lawyers and court, throwing accusations like daggers. I just watched, documenting everything silently. Every panicked word, every tear, every desperate glance. The rock-bottom realization hit her. She had underestimated me. All the power she thought she had, all the manipulation and deceit, meant nothing against the truth and the preparation I had meticulously laid out. And as she sank onto the living room floor, sobbing and pleading, I finally felt the first flicker of calm in weeks. The house, the work, the betrayal, they all culminated here. And for the first time, I wasn't the victim. But even as I stood over her, quiet and in control, I knew the battle wasn't fully over yet. The courtroom was coming, and with it, the final reckoning. The courtroom felt surreal, almost like stepping onto another battlefield. Emily sat across from me, face pale, hands trembling, her carefully curated confidence completely gone. The air was thick with tension, the smell of polished wood and stale coffee making everything feel heavier. I had spent weeks organizing every piece of evidence, screenshots of messages, records of her absences, financial documents showing her attempts to manipulate the house's equity. Every document, every image, every timestamp told a story she could no longer deny. When the judge called the session to order, Emily tried to speak first, her voice pleading and insistent. "Your Honor, this isn't fair. He can't just take the house and keep the profit. It's marital property." I let her words hang in the air, emotionless, watching as her desperation grew. When it was my turn, I calmly laid out everything. The months of renovations I had done alone, her repeated infidelity and neglect, the financial manipulation she had attempted. I spoke deliberately, letting each fact sink in, knowing that the truth was a weapon far more powerful than any argument she could muster. Her lawyer sputtered, trying to find a loophole, but the evidence was airtight. Every time she attempted to interject, I presented the next piece of proof, systematically dismantling the story she had built around herself. Emily's face crumpled further, tears streaming down as the reality of her loss settled in. The judge listened, nodding, occasionally taking notes, then delivered the verdict. The full profit from the house sale was to remain with me. Emily's mouth fell open, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and shame. For the first time in months, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had endured betrayal, heartbreak, and manipulation, and yet here I was, standing in control. Emily's pleas fell on deaf ears, her threats meaningless against the meticulous preparation I had done. The silence that followed was heavy, but liberating. I finally realized that justice wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was mine and refusing to let her take it from me. As I gathered my documents to leave, Emily's gaze locked onto mine, silent, broken, and begging. And in that moment, I knew the story wasn't about the house anymore. It was about finally winning back my life. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt an unfamiliar lightness, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. The streets were bustling with life, cars honking, people rushing past, but none of it reached me. I was in a bubble of quiet victory. For the first time in months, I felt free to breathe without the constant tension twisting my chest. The house, the betrayal, the sleepless nights, it was all behind me. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future that didn't include constant betrayal or manipulation. I spent the following weeks reclaiming my life piece by piece. The money from the house sale allowed me to pay off debts I had ignored while caught up in the renovation madness. I reconnected with friends I had distanced myself from, shared long overdue dinners and laughter, and even started picking up hobbies I had abandoned: guitar, painting, and long hikes in the mornings. Each day, I felt a little more like myself again, and a little less like the broken, betrayed version of me I had been forced to endure. Emotionally, it was complicated. Some days I still felt a sting when I thought of Emily, of the life I had lost, of the trust that had been so casually shattered. But I refused to dwell on it. I realized that betrayal, as devastating as it is, doesn't have to define the rest of your life. I had survived, and more importantly, I had outmaneuvered someone who had underestimated me completely. And in the quiet moments, when the world felt still, I reflected on everything I had learned: boundaries, self-respect, the importance of documenting truth, and the courage it takes to fight for yourself when the person you love is the one doing the most damage. I was stronger, wiser, and more vigilant. Yet, even as I walked forward, there was a subtle tension lingering in my chest, the sense that life had been reset, that the chapters ahead would be mine to write, and that the shadow of betrayal, though diminished, would never fully disappear. And deep down, I knew the ultimate closure was still to come. Weeks after the courtroom, I received a message from Emily that I'll never forget. It was short, almost timid. I'm sorry. I know I ruined everything. I never meant for it to go this far. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time, feeling a flicker of something I hadn't expected. Maybe pity, maybe old familiarity. But I knew better than to respond with anything that would give her control again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and then I let the phone sit, unread. Silence, in this case, was my ultimate answer. I thought back to all the months of betrayal, the laughter behind my back, the late nights, the constant manipulations, and I realized that my peace wasn't in her apology, nor in making her understand. It was in reclaiming myself, my finances, my home, and my dignity. Every sleepless night, every blistered hand, every ounce of patience and planning had led to this moment, a quiet, unshakable victory. I had endured, I had strategized, and I had emerged stronger. I started rebuilding my life fully on my terms. The money from the house sale was invested carefully, and I allowed myself to dream again: travel, hobbies, and even the possibility of new relationships, but with boundaries I would never compromise. The lessons from betrayal had become my armor, and the scars were a reminder that I could survive even the deepest wounds. And though Emily's message lingered in my inbox like a shadow of the past, I knew I didn't need closure from her. I had given myself that. The real justice was in the calm, in the empowerment, in the knowledge that I had the final word. Looking back, it's surreal to think how far I'd come. From sleepless nights alone in a house filled with paint fumes and broken trust, to standing tall with my life intact and my spirit unbroken. The irony was sweet. The woman who thought she had all the power was now left with nothing, while I walked forward, free, whole, and finally, entirely untouchable.